Today on the Daily Charge, subscribers bounce back and Netflix is flying high on the success of Stranger Things 3, setting a new watch time record. And Amazon workers unite to slam the company over warehouse conditions, climate change, and more.
Charge. Today is Thursday, October 17th. I'm Joni Salzman.
I'm Ben Fox-Rubin.
And here are today's top stories. Amazon workers are agitating and organizing to express more and more gripes against their giant overlord employer. Ben, what kind of things are Amazon employees fed up with and what are they doing about it?
Okay, so there are so many. There are so many things. There are at least 7 different employee activist groups that I found. 4 of them are local warehouse worker groups. One of them is called Whole Worker, which is Whole Foods workers that are trying to unionize. Another one is called We Won't Build It, which is against Amazon working with ICE. And yet another one, this is one of the largest and most organized, is a climate change organization called Amazon Employees for Climate Justice. So there's a lot, and they're really focused on a lot of different things.
So it sounds like some of them want to unionize. Other things aren't quite as much labor-related collective bargaining sort of things. How does it all fall on the spectrum? And how is Amazon reacting to all this activism?
So those are great questions. Amazon's response seems to be that to a certain extent, they are actually responding and they are trying to make some small changes. Like, for instance, there was a protest in Eagan in Minnesota. There were a bunch of folks that really got fed up that there wasn't enough parking, like on-site parking, specifically at that warehouse. And so they protested. They did a walkout and they actually got management to specifically say, like, hey, we're going to try to do something about this. That's a really small example, but at the same time, it's actually helping create the snowball effect where folks are standing up, putting their voice out there, they're putting their names out there and saying specifically like, hey, we want to make these changes. And it's really sparking some other activism in other areas. So Amazon seems to be responding in some areas, in other areas
what about,
they really aren't.
What about the most like senior, because some of these things, some of this activism is around some intrinsic elements to Amazon and its business. Is there like response from higher, like the highest level of the company to this?
Yeah.
And is it meaningful response?
I mean, that can be debatable, obviously. So Jeff Bezos had an event in DC where he talked about this huge effort, this really ambitious plan to really try to make Amazon carbon neutral by 2040.
Right.
And the Amazon Employees for Climate Justice really, kind of promoted this and said like, hey, this is really great. We've really tried to force this action really, really quickly. However, they said that they were still going to do a big protest literally the next day. Yeah. And they're trying to push Amazon to do certain things that Bezos said he doesn't want to do. So for instance, they want them to cut off ties with oil and gas companies. Bezos said like, look, we want to provide the best technologies for those types of companies. Insofar as like We Won't Build It, the anti-ICE group, Bezos has said, and other folks have said, like, we want to work with government agencies across the board. So in certain aspects, they've been very clear about the fact that like, hey, we're not going to cut off ties with these certain businesses, whether it's from a philosophical standpoint or a financial standpoint. I mean, you decide as far as why they don't want to do those things.
And then quickly, how does this fit into what's happening more broadly? Yeah.
So it's actually interesting that a good economy is causing a lot more employee activism. A lot of employees, like the folks at GM that had just been striking, have noticed that their companies are doing really, really well. They see those quarterly earnings reports, and they're wondering why their paychecks aren't getting any fatter, or they're not increasing as much as maybe they would hope. So interestingly enough, I talked to a management professor at UConn that said that usually during a recession or during downtimes, employees tend to be a little bit quieter because they're worried about layoffs. But in general, with these types of situations, they're like, hey guys, like you guys are doing great, management's doing great. Why aren't we seeing this too?
Why aren't we seeing our piece of the pie?
Yeah.
Next up, Stranger Things saved Netflix. Well, not exactly, but Stranger Things is the company's most watched series, at least according to the highly selective cherry-pick stats that Netflix very strategically drops every once in a while. Stranger Things was streamed by 64 million Netflix accounts in the last month. Sorry, not in the last month, but in its first month, so the first 4 weeks that it was released. And that helped Netflix to recover from some subscriber growth problems they had in the US. They reported 6 months ago. So what do you think? Are there... Oh, sorry. I need to let you ask me some questions.
I want to ask you what you think.
What do you think?
Yeah, what do you think? So, okay. First of all, 64 million. What's interesting from reading your story is that it's really hard to do comparisons because you can't compare to Nielsen ratings. You can't compare to box office ratings. So is 64 million a lot? Like, is it way more than Bird Box? I feel like that was one of the first ones that came out.
Bird Box had 80 million accounts streamed in the first month. But I think what's notable, so they've had 2 other things. I think it's only been 2 other titles that have been more watched in that first month, that first 4 week time period. Those were Bird Box and then the Adam Sandler Jennifer Aniston movie that I can't remember.
Really?
The name. Adam Sandler's like he goes gangbusters on Netflix. People love it.
I'll respect Adam Sandler, but I don't understand why people still watch those.
It's very positive. But the point is, I'll give it up to Stranger Things in that, those 2 titles that had more viewing, those are movies that get a lot of promotion. It's easier to get people into something when it hasn't been a 3rd season of a show. Generally speaking, the first season of a show is always if it's going to be the most popular, it's usually in the first season, maybe the second. But after the second season, you start to see a wind down where there aren't as many people have already decided whether they're into it or not. It's not usually something that gains in momentum once you start getting to the 3rd, 4th season.
So that shows the continued strength of Stranger Things. One other element that I thought was interesting was Reed Hastings sometime this year specifically said that, the streaming war that's expected to really kick off later this year into next year is going to be trendy. It's going to really spark even more cord cutting, and this is actually good for the company. Obviously, that's self-serving from his perspective because this means that we're seeing a lot more competition, and that's why it's a good thing. It also kind of made me think of Trump's quote about trade wars.
Oh God, I have no idea.
Streaming wars.
No idea.
He was like, trade wars are good and easy to win.
I would not
it was
compare.
like a similar thing.
I'm not going to touch that because I don't really know the logic going on in trade wars. But Reed Hastings' point, and it can be true. There's some validity to it in that he says that all this competition about streaming services like Apple TV Plus is launching on November 1st. Disney Plus is the big kahuna. It's going to be launching on November 12th. There's a lot of attention to those other services that are coming early next year. And so his point is that, look, right now, yes, they're going to be competing against us for subscribers, but really they think that they're going to be getting people to think, I don't need cable anymore. That's where they think that all this discussion around streaming and how it can be a viable option for you and to serve all your entertainment needs means that the thing they'll be letting go won't be necessarily the $16 to $11 Netflix account. It'll be the $90 to $160 cable subscription.
Yeah. So the pie could potentially grow. We'll see. Yeah. We'll find out.
We'll see. Yeah. I think they're going to be excited. They said on the call last night, all the executives are like, we're going to be really glad when these things launch so we don't have to keep talking about them.
That is true.
I don't know if that'll be the actual case. We'll find out.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Are you not signed up for Netflix yet? Pretty much everybody else in the US is. Where are you? Are you signed up? Do you think that Netflix looks less interesting with all these new services coming? And what about Amazon? Are they actually doing right by their workers? Sound off in the comments and we'll tackle whatever you can throw at us. BBG, what are people talking about? What have they got?
How many views did Stranger Things get?
64 million.
64 million? Okay,
so
63 million of those were mine. Just putting that out there.
Well, this is the other interesting thing, I think. And I want to make sure that I got it right, that it was 64.
It was.
It was. Yeah. Okay. The interesting thing is that means that 64 membership accounts watched it. So you have to take into account, that was a terrible pun and I didn't want it to be fun, but I couldn't think of another word. You have to take into account the fact that multiple people watch in a household on one subscription account. And there's also the issue of password sharing. Now,
that never happens. What are you talking about?
It happens, but services like Netflix, they have simultaneous stream limits. So it's not like we know that people password share on Netflix, but we also know that they can't password share and you can't have 14
thousands.
people,
right?
Or 150 people or 1,000 people on one membership account. But you can assume that there's more than one person, more than one. It's not a the 64 million accounts doesn't mean only 64 million people watch. So there's some sort of magnitude of something. also going on there.
Yeah, that being said, it's still frustrating, number one, from a reporting perspective, number one, that they cherry pick these numbers, and number two, that there really isn't a direct comp other than to compare it to other Netflix shows.
Yeah, you can't compare it to anything else.
It'll be interesting to see when Disney Plus comes out, HBO Max, Peacock, Apple TV Plus, whether, I don't know, Nielsen is going to get more involved, because as more eyeballs I mean, like, Netflix is not new.
No, Nielsen is issuing some ratings for Netflix viewing. These are the problems. Netflix has over 150 million subscribers. I think about 55 of them, 56 of them, if I remember from last night, 56 of them are in the US. And Nielsen's ratings only take into account US viewing. So like 2/3 of Netflix subscribers aren't even counted by Nielsen. And Nielsen only counts people that are watching on TV. So anything that's on a mobile device or a laptop or a computer isn't counted either. Like 70 to 80% of Netflix's viewing is on a TV, but there's still a large proportion of it that's watched on other devices. Yeah. So it doesn't count either of those. Yeah. So it just goes to show, like, there's no way to compare. Even when people do track Netflix independently, you can't independently verify these numbers that Netflix is giving.
Cool.
Okay, Ayaz is in the chat again today. Thanks for chiming in. He wanted to clarify that Murder Mystery was that Sandler Aniston movie that came out.
Yeah.
It was so good, apparently.
What?
No, I didn't watch it.
I didn't watch it.
I mean, like, the pinnacle for Adam Sandler for me was the Zohan movie, because, like, I was in on all those jokes with Fizzy Bublé. So, you know. Anyway, never mind.
I can appreciate that, but everybody knows that Billy Madison is the best.
Okay, that's
fair.
Of
all time. Commander Trium, Netflix needs to do more to create content relevant and interesting to its viewers. It's just that simple. Amazon does a better job on that front, though there is plenty of room to improve on both. Do you agree or disagree?
I think it's interesting that who was it that?
Commander Trium.
Commander Trium.
Hello, Commander.
Hey, I think it's interesting that you think that Amazon is serving, and I assume he's talking about serving viewers with Amazon Prime Video.
Commander is a woman, actually.
Oh, sorry. That's interesting, because Netflix has such a bigger catalog. Amazon Prime Video has a much bigger, like, licensed catalog. They have more movies and shows, but in terms of what they produce, they don't make as much as.
And they've got Thursday night football.
And they've got live sports, which Netflix is like, no, won't do it. Yeah, they don't want to do anything live.
So, Commander, I'm interested to know which shows you're really into. Man in the High Castle, I was super into the first season, and then I stopped watching it altogether.
Yeah,
obviously.
See? Even people that are into, like, second seasons and third seasons, they have a hard time.
Right. Marvelous Miss Maisel has gotten really, really good reviews.
I love it. I think it's great.
I haven't watched it.
I love it.
And my wife
hilarious.
has watched the whole thing, which is unfortunately such a stereotype that I would like to watch it. I will watch it at some time. So, yeah. But there are quite a few Amazon shows that I think have been, like, big tentpole shows that have won awards. Fleabag is another one. So, but yeah, Commander, I'd love to hear which ones you are referencing.
I don't even count Fleabag, really, because, like, they just license it, because it's
okay.
It was I can't remember if it was Channel 4 or BBC, but it was a British show, and it, like, did its thing, and then it's kind of like there are other shows that are on Netflix that they say are Netflix originals, but really they were made in England.
Not realize that.
Yeah.
I thought Fleabag was like an Amazon show.
No, they just, like, swoop in at the end, or like Netflix wanted to get Fleabag for the second season. They wanted to swipe it from Amazon because they saw how popular it was, and they saw how popular the second season was in England when it was broadcast. I think, I'm not sure when the deals were. Anyways, and Amazon's gonna have Lord of the Rings. That's gonna be a huge tentpole thing. Be interesting to see.
Nobody cares about that.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
Nobody cares about that.
I want to bring up an issue that I do find with all of this, though. Like, my girlfriend watched Fleabag, and she very much enjoyed it while she was traveling one week, and I wasn't even aware that existed. Like, so many of these things are coming out these days, these premium shows, that they're completely flying under the radar to a certain extent,
like
right?
Because
I feel like
I heard about that today.
Feel like I'm pretty in the know and in the loop, at least with media and geek culture-y stuff. But if they can crank shows out to the point where I don't even know how many there are anymore, is that going to be a problem in the long run? Are we going to reach fatigue sooner than later?
Well, I think that, like, the example of Tall Girl is a good one. You know, that's a teen rom-com. It's like a high school rom-com. And so even though Ben and BBG, I assume you have Netflix accounts, like, there's no reason why Netflix would serve you that, because why would you ever be interested in?
Right.
Would
Whereas,
I watched it.
Probably
They
not.
served it to me because I watch a lot of like the teen, like John Hughes-esque movies, partly because they're super popular on Netflix. I'm like, oh my God, these are insanely popular. I need to know what's
going on with them.
What's going on?
The algorithm serves us up things like Working Moms, which fits our demo
Right.
much more clearly.
And so, like, yeah, as Netflix in particular, but also these other streaming services, they're all going to be trying to make content for a wide variety of of both niche and mass audiences. And so the problem becomes that they can surface those and target those for individual viewers within their own service to varying degrees of success, Netflix kind of being the standard that everyone sort of aspires to be. But even Netflix, people are always like, I have to look forever until I can find something that I want to find. So even the best in the business isn't even lifting and surfacing these things in a way that is perfect or even like unaggravating. And then two, all these services, they're not going to be talking to each other. That's the whole point. They're competitors. And so for you to know what's good on each service, then that requires labor on the user to know which ones really appeal to you.
Joan, I'm curious, in the conversations you've had with any of these streaming platforms, literally any of them, what are some of the problems that they've come up with when it comes to developing that algorithm and any machine learning they use to try to make recommendations? Do they struggle with people like me who can watch like 16 straight hours of Parks and Rec on loop, drop back and watch some Saturday morning Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons, and then hard pivot over into like the bloodiest, goriest horror movie all in the span of 24 hours? Is that something that really messes with their system?
So, I don't know, especially with the new ones that are launching, I don't exactly know how they're going to be approaching recommendations, but the way that Netflix does it generally is they kind of, I would think about it like in terms of like neighborhoods. Like they think like you, or Venn diagrams or something like that. Like you, Ben, or you, BBG, you have your like entertainment viewing household, apartment building, whatever, on the certain corner of the certain block. And that's an intersection of horror. And so because this is like a BVG centered universe, all the like the horror neighborhood like has one foot on the corner of your block, and like the binge watching, I can't remember some of the other things. Parks and Rec has one foot on the corner of your block. And so they start to like develop, they sort of understand these like cohorts that you're part of. And from that cohort, they start to know that people in that cohort also tended to like ABC, and people in the Parks and Rec cohort also tended to like D, E, and F. So that's generally how they approach it. But but part of the reason that Netflix is able to do the best at these sort of recommendations is because they've been doing it so long, and they have the data to do it, and they don't share that data with anybody. So it'll be interesting to see. Disney has a lot of data. Apple has a lot of data about what you like. But I think of all of them, Apple probably is in the best position to know on an individual level, linked to your Apple ID, the kinds of things that you use in the App Store and that you have purchased from iTunes and stuff like that. So they might be at the best advantage. But really, yeah, it takes time for them to get to know you. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's interesting will be that some of these services are going to be subscription only, and therefore you don't have to worry about them sharing this data with advertisers or marketers. Netflix is that way, Apple TV Plus is that way, Disney is that way. But others of them are going to have ad-free tiers, but also ad-supported tiers. So then you get into a privacy issue about how much of your information and how much data that they're generating on you will be shared to third parties. That's something that Netflix has never had to deal with, but some of these new competitors will.
I feel like a conversation, like if we were able to get somebody from Netflix R&D or something like that to come in and try to walk us through some of their processes that they take into account when developing these systems without giving up, too much.
The secret sauce.
I think that'd be a really interesting interview if we could ever set something like that
That's probably Todd Yellen, who I call high energy Yellen, because he's very high energy.
Yeah. They do these at events sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Like for instance,
like
I remember I pitched to you one thing where they were talking about how the algorithm serves different thumbnails to different people depending on what they know about you. Yeah. So exactly from what you were saying, they can pull from such a large audience at this point. And plus, these types of algorithms have existed for a really long time, whether it's with Netflix, Spotify, Pandora, these companies have just gotten much, much better at trying to like target specifically like what to serve people up next, because they're in the business of, you know, soaking up as much of your time as possible. I mean, like Facebook is another perfect example of that, where they really try to serve you the next most interesting thing to get you to keep scrolling or keep watching or what have you.
Right. Yeah. But I think that the difference between the Facebook, like making an analogy between Facebook and these companies, is that Facebook engagement and keeping you stuck in on their app is critical to them making money. Like the more ads, they can serve you more ads the longer you stay in there. And with Netflix and these subscription services, yes, they want you to be watching as much as possible, but only to the point that you're actually enjoying the service and you want to keep paying them for it. So if they're wasting your time and serving you, like if Netflix were to go the clickbait route, it's like, we want people to be watching our video,
you might get
18 hours of the day.
Yeah.
Maybe eat a meal, maybe sleep a few hours, then come right back, which is what Facebook wants. I mean, they don't. They say they don't, but
no, they do. They do.
They do. But like, you know, that's not a recipe to have people be like. People are going to be like, oh God, I hate Netflix. I don't want to pay for this anymore.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
Yeah. So they have more of an ingrained financial incentive to not make their service frustrating, even if that frustration comes from binging things for hours and hours and losing your loved ones and like not having a life and that kind of thing, like Facebook does.
Sounds lovely.
Relevant self-serving plug. Make sure to check out CNET's NetPicks podcast, hosted by our very own Ayaz Akhtar, to stay up on all of the streaming noise being made these days. Speaking of Ayaz, he's asking, do we know if Amazon makes recommendations for videos based on your shopping habits?
I don't know. That's a good question. They probably do based on your purchases within the Prime Video app, because that would just make sense. But if it's, you know, across different catalogs, or if it's across, you know, what your actual shopping behavior is, I don't know that they've ever actually said that.
I don't know if they've said it, but just from what's being manifested in recommendations, I think they probably do. But I think that it's very like, it's like, you know, in my family, because we have kids, we buy a lot of kids stuff. And so I get recommended on my account a lot of kids shows, whether that's because we started showing our kids shows, or whether they're surfacing it because they know we buy kids things.
Or if it's a little bit of both. Yeah.
Or a little bit of both. Yeah.
It's a good question, because I do wonder, like, so for instance, with human reviewers, people were really taken aback by that. So I would be curious to see if people found out that was the case, that your purchasing behavior was being used for that algorithm. Considering all the privacy concerns that people have had these days, my initial impression is people wouldn't be that excited about it. And they'd be like, my purchasing is my purchasing, and stop mining it for more information.
I don't know if people would, honestly. I kind of disagree with you, because I feel like there's a big difference between you're listening to me talk in my home versus, you know, that I bought Barack Obama's autobiography, and therefore you think I might want to watch this documentary about the Obama White House or something like that. Or, you know, it doesn't have to be Obama. It could be Trump too. You know that I really like reading all these Trump supporter books. Therefore you probably are going to start recommending documentaries about the Trump administration. You know, like that. I don't know if people would be as unnerved by that sort of cross-pollination between the different parts of Amazon as they are. Because like there's a big difference, I think, between that and there's something that's listening to me in my home, and there are people on the other end that are listening to it too.
Yeah.
That's pretty creepy.
I mean, we have seen how creepy that has been. Yeah, people were pretty uncomfortable with it.
Cross-genre, cross-medium. I'm with you, Joe, and I don't know if I'd necessarily read the same thing I'd watch. So, yeah, I would hope that they'd keep their nose out of that, I guess. I'd also wish that they would find a better pace. Like, going back to the whole oversaturation thing, we're going to get to the point where we're going to enjoy a series at lightning speed, breakneck speed, and then it's going to be done, and we're all going to be heartbroken because we binged it in a weekend, and then you're just going to wait 5 years until the inevitable reboot, and then you're essentially going to be walking down that path again. That's what it feels like these days.
Well,
Storm King says, when does Netflix reach a saturation point so that new growth becomes impossible?
When is Netflix going to reach that saturation point?
It's pretty close in the U.S.
In the U.S., they're getting towards that point where, especially now that they're going to be facing more competition Even though they say like, hey, it's going to draw people away from cable, but I think it's going to be harder to win those dollars when there's more people directly saying, instead of giving them your dollars, give us your dollars. So in the US, where Netflix has been operating as a streaming service the longest by far, they're starting to reach that point where it's really hard to add people as much as they had every they had their first drop 3 months ago in US subscribers. But that being said, 2/3 of their subscribers are international, and although there's competition ad hoc in every market, Netflix certainly it's the single biggest video streaming service that spans the globe. There are a couple in China that are also really big, but they stick in China. So
going back to your other point, BVG, as far as binging, I've definitely wondered about that myself. So with Stranger Things 3, I feel like everybody was talking about it, at least in my neck of the woods, for like a week maybe.
Yeah.
And then it was done because everybody basically binged the show, and if they didn't, they weren't really chatting about it nearly as much on Twitter. Whereas another major play, which I would argue is a much bigger one, was Game of Thrones, and because each one of those episodes was dropping every single Sunday, that was a much longer burn. And even though people were complaining about it incessantly, there was this pace and cadence where it was just part of the zeitgeist for, I feel, a longer time.
Right. So people bring up the Game of Thrones example, and a lot, in terms of like comparing binge model to like, but look at how fun it was with Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was like, I'll say this, I've said this before on Daily Charge, I'll say it again. It was like a once in a lifetime phenomena. Like there's not very many Game of Thrones out there. There's like a couple things, like Stranger Things, I think, is one thing that sort of maybe comes close.
Could you argue that the next Lord of the Rings series might be kind of trying to knock that model?
I think you're right.
I mean,
Joan,
it's
that it will be,
it's going to be really
very hard to reach that pinnacle. You're
like,
right. That it was one of the, it was in this age where people's attention is spread so thinly across so many different things, that was the closest that we have gotten to, what is it, like scheduled viewing or, engagement television that, you really don't see unless it's like a debate or
appointment television.
Yeah, appointment television. Thank you. Or, sports like obviously the Super Bowl, but also Monday Night Football on a regular weekly basis. So I remember we did that with Seinfeld way back when.
But that was just a different time. Like
that was a totally different time, and there wasn't a DVR back then.
Yeah.
So
you had to watch it then, or you didn't get to see it until reruns, until syndication.
Right, and to me with Game of Thrones specifically, it was like if you don't watch it that night, everybody's going to be talking about it the next day, and you're in threat for, I don't know, getting some sort of spoiler or whatever. If
FOMO.
Yeah, exactly. So
the other they actually addressed this point last night. Last night when they were discussing earnings, someone asked the executives, people say that you, like with Stranger Things, you have all this buzz and then it fizzles out like immediately thereafter. And so they raised the point, and there are some caveats to this, but they've said like, look, we do the binge model. Also, no, none of these other streaming services are going to do the binge model. They're going to be doing week to week for just this reason. But Netflix, like, look, we do the binge model for the vast majority of our shows, but there are certain shows that we do week to week. Two examples. One is Rhythm and Flow, which is the reality series where they're experimenting. It's it's like their rapping competition show where they're experimenting with it being a week to week release so that there can be that time for conversation. That's more recent. More prevalent is they do have these shows that have like Great British Baking Show, which they release week to week because that way it's being released in the UK right now on Channel 4, I think. And this way, by releasing it week to week, almost simultaneous with that broadcast, Netflix viewers that aren't in the UK don't have to wait until the end of the season in order to get all these episodes that other people in the UK. The point is they've compared the two, and they've found that they get more social buzz and engagement with these binge things when they really do hit and strike gold than they do with these things that they do release week to week, that they find that the social engagement isn't as fervent over the course of 8 weeks or 12 weeks when it's on Netflix. Now, like a lot of Netflix stats, they didn't give us any hard numbers to support it. They just said it generally as a blanket statement. But that's what they claim, is that even though it feels like it because we have like an example like Game of Thrones, except for Game of Thrones, there's not a lot of things. Yes, the buzz continues, but mostly those are in shows where there's a dedicated fan base that isn't a mass audience fan base.
Yeah.
Disclaimer before the comment section chews me up. I recognize that Lord of the Rings was a film phenomenon about 15 years ago, and before that, of course, a book phenomenon. I'm just saying, are they bringing a rebooted TV series, per se, on the coattails of Game of Thrones, or would have happened inevitably? That's all I want to put it out there. I got to thinking, this is the internet. Someone's going to chew me a new one for that. All right, real quick. Does anyone else get anxiety with their lists on streaming services? I don't feel like I can watch everything with the Disney Plus launch starting next month. It's going to increase. Is this the best first world problem we could ever have?
Yes. Yeah,
answer.
I mean, we've been talking about the golden age of television or streaming broadly for the past couple of years now, and the Emmys get a lot more buzz than they used to. They're basically, I mean, like, a lot more about this world than I do, but they've gotten a lot closer to Oscar caliber, even the shows themselves. Yeah. And having a lot of good television, like more good television than you could actually watch, is great. That's just fine. It's the same thing as like books. There are too many books for you to read in a lifetime that are really, really good. So the corollary is much worse. The alternative is much worse, where, you're going to read Ulysses and then you're done. All right, there aren't any other good books. So I'd love to go back and actually watch all of Mad Men. My wife and I watched it for a while, and then we kind of dropped off. I think we had
like
our
the
kids.
third season.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, it's kind of slow. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too.
I mean, well, the thing that I would say is that I don't think it's a first world problem. It's just like a best kind of problem for almost everybody, because these streaming services, Netflix is pretty much global except for China. And in China, there are low cost streaming services on par with Netflix that serve that market. And, in places like India, they've started experimenting with this mobile only, very low cost subscription, so that people in places that aren't quote unquote first world, that are more developing countries, can have access to the entire catalog that everybody else who pays for the, premium tier in Europe or in America or in places, anywhere get. So I don't think it's like a first world problem. I think it's just like a great problem that everybody can enjoy having that problem.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the day that we can finally get a viable excuse that HR has to let you take off of work because of a FOMO condition. It's like, shoot, I gotta binge this. I can't come into work today, or else I'll be spoilered. All right, we are way over time. Let's tackle one more real quick. Which streaming platform do you think has the best quality, not quantity, of movies and shows? Stranger Things on Netflix, The Boys on Amazon. The Boys was awesome, by the way. Impulse on YouTube. Right now, I've been heavily favoring Hulu for the past several weeks, especially as of late, because they just released a new season of Letterkenny, which if you're not watching, you need to watch, or I'm going to remove you from this show audience.
I'm not watching it. What happens when the host isn't watching?
Stand up and leave.
Oh, damn it.
So quality, what's our conclusion?
I
That's a
watch
good
a
question.
lot of HBO. That's,
I can't,
that's an easy answer, I guess.
I don't know. It's hard to. I watch so much. I love titles on different services, and also we don't know how Apple TV Plus's originals are going to be. They could be amazing, and they could be just meh. They could just be really expensive meh stuff. They could be really bad. Same with Disney Plus. Same with, HBO Max, which is the Time Warner one that's going to be launching, will have all the HBO stuff, but also have like
Friends.
It'll have. Oh, I can never remember.
Big
which
Bang
one.
Theory.
I can never remember. I think, Warner has Big Bang Theory and Friends, and I think Peacock's going to have The Office. I can't remember.
Oh, wait a minute. You're right. I might be confusing the two.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's, even
Double check it before you sign up for any of this stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't make a quality between. What I can say, like, definitively is that for the generalized human being, if you are trying to pick one thing that you think might have a title that really appeals to you, it's by law of averages, it's going to be Netflix, because they have the biggest catalog.
But he said not quantity. He specified
I know, but like
quality.
that's the thing. It's qualitative stuff. It's so individual.
Subjective.
Like for every individual, like the thing, like you love the DC thing that you're getting for free, but I would think that that's like, I would have zero interest in it just because I'm not into DC Comics or that universe at all. So it's just such an individual thing. Your individual preferences dictate which one has the most value and in terms of quality, like and if you just want to go by like production quality, all of them are spending ridiculous amounts of money on these shows, like all of them. So there's going to be the highest production value on at least one title on all of them.
Let's get to work on developing a cataloging system, or like a game of bingo to decipher, okay, this show cost over $1 million, it turned a 300% profit, and it got X amount of streams, kind of thing, to try to like...
That's a horror show.
Qualify.
You just described a horror movie.
Probably. Hey, one more really super fast, just because we didn't really talk that much on Amazon today.
Yes,
Ben,
Amazon.
Regarding the Amazon story, should one try to avoid using one-day shipping? Will that actually alleviate the stress on workers?
No, that's a good question. I don't know. Amazon's going to move toward one-day shipping regardless. They've said that they're going to push that to become the new default as opposed to 2-day shipping. So if people are really concerned about Amazon's worker treatment, what I've seen is that people stop shopping on Amazon or they cancel their Prime subscription. So trying to avoid one-day shipping, I don't really know that you're going to be able to do that very easily. And by the way, no, I'm not suggesting that you stop shopping at Amazon or cancel your Prime subscription. It's not my position to tell you to do that or not to do that. But definitely the workers, especially the warehouse workers, I've noticed have really gotten a bigger voice and they've been speaking up a lot more. So it's been interesting to see that happen. And as that continues, we'll see how Amazon responds.
So switching from like 1-day shipping to 2-day shipping probably won't make a difference. If you want to make a difference in workers' lives, then you have to go like with a more drastic sort of.
I don't know. Like if a bunch of people cancel their Prime subscriptions, then people could get laid off, So like, yeah. I'm just saying for folks that are, they pay attention to some of the concerns that warehouse workers have been talking about a lot. Generally, like a lot of people have made the calculus to say, I'm going to cancel Prime or I'm going to go out of my way to not shop on Amazon. That's still a fairly niche move, I would say. I don't see a ton of people doing that, but that's at least a narrative that's gotten a little bit more attention more recently. I don't bump into a lot of people that have done that.
Yeah.
All right, we went super duper long today, but we're trying to make up the difference for being so lackluster in the past couple weeks due to conflicts and me being sick. So yeah, thanks everybody for sticking around. When the conversation's good, the conversation's good. What can I say? But have a great week. Joan, go ahead and take us out.
Yeah, if you have any feedback for us, you can hit us up on Twitter about what you want to see, and don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. Ring the bell. That means that you'll get a dose of essential tech news on the regular. Have a great weekend. For the Daily Charge, I'm Joni Salzman.
I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
Thanks for joining us.
Can't get enough? Check out the Daily Supercharge, our extended post show with special features, audience Q&A, and in-depth reviews. Available now wherever you get your podcasts.